What's up, fantasy champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network. Do you like the Oakland A's? Are you a fan of the Golden Knights? Do you love the Los Angeles Chargers? Well then, my friend, you're in the right place. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show with your host, Jake the Snake Silva, brought to you by the Spotlight Sports Network.
All right, folks, it's that time again. We are live all on the social media platforms on a Tuesday. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. Wherever and however you may be watching and listening tonight, we're all over Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and of course you can follow me on Instagram as well under the Snake Sports Talk Show. And also subscribe and follow us on the Spotlight Sports Network, where we have everything you need, all sports news, and so much more on the Spotlight Sports Network. Man, we have so much that we've got to get through here today, but man, it is going to be an absolute jam-packed one. Man, we had a jam-packed one yesterday with obviously the 3 interviews with Mitch Kofsky, Coach Donte, and of course Darian Hopkins of the Spotlight Raiders Talk. So we had an awful lot of them, and then not to mention having an interview with Jeremy Case as well to be discussing the NHL season with us regards to the new endorsement deals and so much more. But I'm very glad to be here with all of you guys, because in 2 days, the 2021 season's kicking off in the NFL. There's so much really to talk about and a whole lot of headliners. So let's dig into it tonight. So, first of all, we already know that the NFL season, it's going to be exciting. There's a lot of different stories, a lot of different headliners, and there's so much exciting talent happening all around in the NFL. We know this for sure. And I could tell you this. I've pinpointed a bunch of teams, and I've also done my buy and sell of all the winning records of both the AFC and the NFC. And as I've said before, there are a couple of teams that I've mentioned. Kansas City may be winning the AFC West. The Colts may be winning the South. The Browns may make a surprising run to win the North. But, of course, you got Baltimore in the middle of the mix. And then in the AFC East, Buffalo is just too good. Their defense, Josh Allen in the offense, it's just going to be wild and jam-packed. So there are a couple of teams right now that I look at in the AFC, and then even in wild card spots. I feel like the Chargers could be a wild card team. Baltimore could be a wild card team. The Titans could push for a wild card, but it's not going to be as easy of a road as people think it is. And then you've got a couple of other mixtures. The Raiders want to be up into the mix and so much more. But I focus a little bit more on the NFC because, as I mentioned, there are a bunch of things that come to mind when it comes to the NFC. And there really is. The fact that I have the Packers winning the North, I have Tampa Bay winning the South. In the NFC East, it's a toss-up, but I feel like Washington may win the division. And then in the West, because of how stacked it is, I feel like it's going to be a complete battle between Seattle and San Francisco. And then there's the wild card spots. And so there are a couple of teams that question me. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the LA Rams. First of all, this week one schedule, and by the way, by the bottom half of the hour, it's my favorite segment on my show. It's Prime Predictions. It's a brand new year, folks. I am so excited to be doing Prime Predictions with all of you guys. I can't wait to start it sooner. But I feel like, because as I've said, when it comes to Prime Predictions, majority of all the predictions that we've had, it's been an 80-20 hit. So that means majority of these picks have been hits. There are a couple of teams and a couple of games that I have pointed out that I'm questionable about. Because first of all, let's talk about the game between the Bears and Rams. That bet line is plus 7.5. Let me explain to you why I'm picking the Bears. That's only going to be one of those picks. If you look at the Rams, what were some of the things that were concerning that they needed to work on? Well, first of all this talk behind closed doors when it came to Sean McVay, Jared Goff, and the rest of this offense. So instead, they felt like they could trust Jared Goff, yet at the same time, they don't trust Jared Goff. So it was just a weird relationship. And at the same time, people knew when Jared Goff came into this league, he was not going to be the most impactful starter right away. He needed direction. He needed help. And this was at a time when Jeff Fisher was the coach, then eventually moved on to Sean McVay. And McVay got the best out of Jared Goff. But now a lot of questions are kind of popping up for the Rams. Whether or not if this is actually a team that could be a threat in the season and not to mention push for a playoff spot. Because all the storylines are Goff gets traded to Detroit, in comes Matthew Stafford. And Stafford has not had a snap with the Rams at all in the first team practice. Not to mention, hasn't played at all in the preseason. So I have never got a gist of what he looks like under Sean McVay's system. And people have been high praising Matthew Stafford for the past several months since the trade happened. My concern about the Rams, I know Cam Akers is out with an injury. He's done for the year. So instead, they go and they pick up Sony Michel from New England. They have Darrell Henderson Jr. They have a couple of other, rushers, but doesn't really seem promising. So they're basically filling in the holes. But when you look at the matchup between Chicago and the Rams, Chicago knows a lot more about Matthew Stafford. This is why week one is not going to be that easy in Los Angeles. And better yet, a Sunday night game. Because all that you're going to get is you are going to witness and find out. I know it's week one. It's unpredictable. I get it. But you're going to find out how Matthew Stafford really thrives with Sean McVay. Especially against a team who has faced Stafford for years and has figured out his number. By the way, you have to look at the playoff splits between Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford. Stafford has gotten into the playoffs 3 times and was not great, especially with the group he had, the support, the head coaching. None of it was good. The only impactful player Matthew Stafford ever had in his career was Calvin Johnson, Megatron. That's the only player. Brandon Pettigrew, Nate Burleson, and others came and gone. So there was nobody else that he could literally find as his favorite target, let alone an offensive line that could protect him. So now Jared Goff goes to Detroit, and the only thing that you look at is Jared Goff has made it into the playoffs a couple times, but made it all the way to a Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford hasn't been able to make that jump yet, and he's been in the league longer. And I know what a lot of you are going to say. Well, if he had support, if he had a really good cast, that's fine. But sometimes there were also mistakes that Matthew Stafford made on his own. And sometimes that can often question you on the back of your mind what could happen with Matthew Stafford. But I'm looking at this NFC, and there are several teams that can make pushes. Seattle, San Francisco, Tampa, Carolina could push in for a playoff spot. Green Bay, Chicago could punch in. And then you got the East with maybe Washington, bits and pieces of Dallas and Philly. But that's honestly all that I'm getting. But when you talk about the Rams, and regardless of having a really good defense with Leonard Floyd, Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey, regardless of that, you got to have an offensive playmaker. And sure, maybe he does have a much better offensive line this time around than what he had in the past with Detroit. And sure, maybe he's got better offensive weapons than what he had the second Megatron retired. But all of those questions are going to be answered Sunday night against Chicago at home in Los Angeles. And I'm just telling you, I don't think anybody could even predict how high the stakes and the pressures are in Los Angeles, especially when you look at Matthew Stafford, who hasn't even taken a snap in preseason at all with his brand new team. And so that's where I think that a lot of the pressures are going to come from here on out. All right, so listen, there are a couple of games on here. One of them is a revenge game. Sam Darnold and the Jets. Okay. Another, Dak Prescott back from injury and is facing off against Tom and the Bucs. The other part, Alabama quarterbacks, Tua and Mac Jones. And then there's one that I think is very interesting, Browns and Chiefs. Because a lot of people want to convince me that Baker Mayfield is the guy. That Baker is the reason Cleveland's here. Think back to about his rookie year. Because think about it. This is also a player who's gone through 3 different coaches. This is the third with Kevin Stefanski. You had Hugh Jackson, who I honestly thought was a grit grind coach, was a guy that was willing to go through the trenches to find the light at the end of the tunnel, but then eventually got fired. And then Cleveland made the mistake of hiring Freddie Kitchens, who barely even has a resume in college, let alone in high school. So then out goes that. In Baker's first year, in his rookie year, sure, he had the most touchdown passes at the time before Justin Herbert broke it. But then at the same time, you follow up with a season with Freddie Kitchens, who was completely overwhelmed. He did not have exactly the right formulas and not even the right words to say at press conferences. And so it completely changed how we viewed Cleveland, like we've always viewed him. But then in comes Kevin Stefanski and completely changes this culture. This game in itself, because this one is not as easy. What's going on, CG? What's going on? Big Play Slay, what's happening? So my thought process with this, there is no better matchup than to be facing against Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. You have 10 former first rounders on this roster and 4 of them who are number 1 overall picks. This is not a time to be underachieving. But again, a lot of this is Baker. People view him as the savior of this franchise. I beg to differ. Now, of course, me and my colleagues gone back and forth about this. And even though Baker Mayfield does do the right things, but all it took was to have a grown-up in the room when it came to the head coaching position. That's what made him work. Because again, you think about these television commercials, you think about his performances on and off the field, he needed a sense of direction. None of us wanted Baker Mayfield to fail, but a lot of us were kind of, we were kind of pumping the brakes here for a little bit because we were not sure how this was going to turn out. But apparently it worked with Kevin Stefanski. And it's worked out much bigger and better than we thought. Now, I think we look at Cleveland, and I do think that from the front office standpoint, from the general managing to the ownership, man, I think this is going to be an action-packed game. If you date back to the playoffs between Cleveland and Kansas City, Cleveland was not that far off. They had pass rushes. They were getting to Patrick Mahomes. The only question is how good that secondary is going to be with John Johnson now. So they figured out their issues. The offensive line is strong to protect Baker. He's got plenty of offensive weapons. He's also got a very reliable defensive front seven. So he's got a lot. And I am very I'm very curious how this game will play. But I have to say, I think for me personally with this game, this feels like a revenge game to me. Because one, Cleveland seriously wants to make a lot more noise. And at the same time, I mean, I know how great that we look at Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. But you know what, though? That defense is unpredictable. Outside of Chris Jones, outside of Tyrann Mathieu, and a bunch of players, and I spoke about this, Kansas City almost had an Oklahoma feel to me. Because Oklahoma, with Lincoln Riley, could be one of the greatest offensive geniuses, but their defense is giving up 20, 30 points a game. I am not sure how Kansas City is really going to compete with that, but I understand why that they needed to reload their offense because they needed an offense that was going to score 30-plus points, and knowing their defense was not going to be very reliable. So I just think of it this way. Cleveland, in the first week, they're going to come out with some serious fire. This is going to be a team, come week one, they'll be the biggest story headliner. And it'll surprise you, but I'm taking Cleveland in that game. Because one, I'm not saying that I don't trust Kansas City. I think Kansas City is going to be just fine. But in a game like this, where you faced off in the playoffs, and again, Cleveland wants to get revenge back. So there is a lot on the line. And I know it's only week one, but it's only going to get bigger and better from here. But it's all going to depend on how Baker really sets the tone for the rest of the pieces to follow. Coming up next, because we've got a lot to really cover up on, and I look at this earlier. So news reports. So, of course, with what's happening with the Baltimore Ravens, with a couple of injuries. So it is official that they have signed Le'Veon Bell to a contract. He's initially with the practice squad for right now, but sources are being told that he may end up making the roster and he will be ready to play week one on the road in Las Vegas against the Raiders. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but can't wait to see. But we'll have a lot more news talks here coming up next. And, of course, my best bottom of the hour, my prime predictions. All right, so for all of you fantasy players out there, far and wide, coast to coast, and you guys absolutely love fantasy sports and you love winning cold, hard cash, well, we're starting things up right now. And, by the way, after this show tonight, we have our annual draft night tonight. So you guys do not want to end up missing that here on the Spotlight Sports Network. But, of course, you guys want to win cold, hard cash and places where you've got pool plays that are reloading every week. And, by the way, for week one, because of the extravaganza and the celebration of the new season, there's pool plays that are going up for about $100K. So you don't want to end up missing out. Get yourselves signed up and get yourselves put into those pool plays. So how you do it is you download it on your mobile device through Google Play in the App Store, and you also go online to thrivefantasy.com. But when you do sign up and when you put in your $20 deposit, Thrive Fantasy will match it to $50 when you use promo code SS Network as a little special thank you. And of course, at the same time, give you much more fun to play with all these pool plays that are constantly being reloaded every single week. So what are you guys waiting for? Sign up right now at thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network. That is thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
And everything I do is unseen. But I know that's just in my mind. I know everything is just in my mind. Do you really want to be famous? Do you really want to be a superstar? Do you really want to get dangerous? Do you even know where the groupies are?
Welcome to Hammer's House.
Raider, bruh. Always a Raider, bruh. Shit simple as that. You look silver and black. Lot of bread invested in that O-line. Car insurance cost the arm and a leg to reach that goal line. It's go time.
Bitch, I'm a ball, bitch, I'm a ball. Don't get no ball, don't get no ball. What's in my cup? What's in my cup? All of that punch, look at that punch. Bitch, I'm a ball, ballin' like Kobe. I'll keep it moving, cause you do not know me. Bitch, I'm a ball.
Welcome to the My City, My Game pod show featuring Raider J77, your place for all things Raiders and all things Trailblazers. Brought to you by the Spotlight Sports Network. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Now let's go.
All righty. Well, folks, this is going to be very interesting. So you know what? I'm going to really get right on to it. Jake the Snake Silva here from the Snake Sports Talk Show. Since, of course, we're kind of jammed up on time with as far as our news goes. So instead, we're going to get right there toward the bottom half of the hour, and that is the NFL Prime Predictions. Folks, I've been doing this now for the last couple of years and the last couple of seasons, and most of these picks have been hits, like 80-20 on the hit columns. They really, really have. I'm really excited to see what this new season is really going to bring here. And especially with the way that the season's shaped up with all the teams, with all the players in their respective clubs, I think we kind of get a gist of what we're going to get here. So it's going to be very interesting. I cannot wait for it any longer. Again, I'm super excited for this, folks. This every year is like, in living here in Las Vegas, we have the big time bet lines, and we just love betting on sports, mostly on football as well. So without further ado, the 2021 NFL season is officially arrived, and let's begin with our prime predictions. Here we go. All right, so first off, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys, the big-time Thursday night game. I know what a lot of people are going to think. They're going to think that Dallas is going to come out with some serious fire with their offense. But you know what? I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here at -7.5. Listen, Dak Prescott's coming back from an injury. We don't know how healthy Dak Prescott really is, but we know that they are loaded on their offense. Ezekiel Elliott, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper. That's fine. But the concern I have, and that I've always spoke about this, has been defensively on that side of the football, because the secondaries has just not been great. So that's going to be my biggest concern with Dallas moving forward into the season. But you got Tom Brady, you got all 23 of their main players back on this roster for another run. I think Thursday night's going to be a lot of fun. And by the way, if you're looking at the point spread, I'm going to take the over up on that. So I'm going to take Tampa Bay at a -7.5, and let's go with a 33-24. Tampa Bay wins. They celebrate with their Super Bowl victory, raising the banner, and they're going to get a victory here at home. This is an interesting game, but you know what? I'm going to take the Falcons at -3.5. Now, I know what a lot of you are probably going to say. Well, Philadelphia, they got some brand new pieces. They got a brand new coach. They got a brand new quarterback, and everybody's kind of coming back bit by bit healthy on their offensive line. Now, I know that it's quite the concern, but here's the other thing that I want to pinpoint. Atlanta, this is the first time in Matt Ryan's career that he has an offensive-minded coach in Arthur Smith. It's not going to be as easy for Philadelphia with the season they had last season to really come up against Atlanta on the road against this newly offense with Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Kyle Pitts, and who knows who's running the football for him. But I do think that during the season, Arthur Smith is going to get the best out of Matt Ryan throughout the season, but it's going to be a close one. So I'll swallow the points at 3.5, and I'm going to take a 28-23 Falcons win at home in Mercedes-Benz against the Eagles. Come on, this is not even close. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills at -6.5. Folks, you're at home in Buffalo, little bit of cold weather. There's a lot at stake here with this storyline because, number one, it's payday for Josh Allen, but it's worked out over the last couple of seasons with Sean McDermott. They figured out their formula, and Brian Daboll's fixed up this offense. They got deep targets like Stephon Diggs. You got you've also got Devin Singletary in the backfield, and Zay Jones. There is a lot you could look at, and or Zach Moss. So you could look at a lot of what Buffalo has to offer, but they're very much loaded. They are all in this year. And you look at Pittsburgh, they're without their top-tier offensive line, and you're trusting that this offensive line is going to create holes for Najee Harris to run, I doubt that. They do not want to be Big Ben reliant. You could totally tell from it. But I'm going to take the 6.5, and I do think this is a 10-point game, so I'm going to take Buffalo to win 30-20 at home against Pittsburgh. So I don't usually do this a whole lot, but you know what? I love the offensive weaponry that Minnesota has. I'm going to take them at -3.5. I know the concerns about, Joe Burrow and all of this for Cincinnati, but first of all, is that offensive line really reliable in protecting Joe Burrow? We don't know. And they've got really good pieces. They got T. Higgins, they got Jamar Chase, they have Auden Tate, they got Tyler Boyd, and they even got Joe Mixon. So I'm not concerned about the weaponries and Joe Burrow. I'm concerned of the offensive line protecting Joe Burrow, giving him enough time to throw to his playmakers. So that's the concern I have, and it's another season as Zach Taylor. I do not think he's on the hot seat this season because this is a rebuilding franchise that's only going to get better, and I feel like they have got to get better with protecting their franchise quarterback. They really do. But I do think Minnesota, they revamped up their defense. They figured out their problems, and they filled up some holes. And they've also got, their offensive weapons outside of Justin Jefferson, who's hoping to come back this season, to basically, get points up on the board for their offense. So I'm going to take Minnesota and win this one 27-23. And, -3.5 is really not that much, folks. I like it. Minnesota wins on the road in Cincinnati. Come on, another no-brainer? Really? With a fully loaded and healthy roster, I'm taking the 49ers at 7.5. Because first and foremost, what does San Francisco have that Detroit does not? First of all, Detroit doesn't have a reliant frontline group in the offense. Okay, the offensive line's coming back super healthy for San Francisco. The defense is getting healthier for San Francisco, especially Nick Bosa. And you've got another really big year out of Fred Warner. So there are a lot of really good positives for San Francisco this season, not to mention Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and a couple of other real good offensive weaponries. And listen, they're going to start Jimmy Garoppolo just to see how things really pan out. But again, it's a storyline of this year. But Detroit, if they're not out there eating kneecaps or, basically running through the tunnels with a lion, I don't want to hear it. So I think San Francisco is going to win this game big time. 33-20 is my final score with that -7.5. Now, I was kind of surprised at this, but I'm going to really, really surprise everybody with this. I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals at +3 against Tennessee. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking of right now because Julio Jones is with the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill has a brand new weapon. And then you've also got Derrick Henry coming off of another strong season. But besides that, that's not my concern. I like how tight that this bet line is in this specific game because, first of all, the Cardinals revamped their defense, getting J.J. Watt, and they got a couple of other pieces. But the offensive line has got to protect Kyler Murray. And even so, Kyler Murray can still spread across the football field. He could still be able to make plays when he needs to. And I think it's a serious significance for the Cardinals moving forward. But for as close as it is, 3 points is really all that I need. I would expect DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk really to get, to really be impactful in this game against Tennessee because outside of Kevin Byard, I don't trust that secondary. So I'm going to take the Cardinals. 3 points is all I need here. 27-24, it's going to be a close game. Kyler Murray is going to take this win on the road. All right, this was obviously going to be a rocky start for the Indianapolis Colts, but I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks at -2.5. First of all, I love Indianapolis's defense. Don't get me wrong. With Darius Leonard and Kwity Paye that they got out the draft and a couple of other good defensive pieces, especially the secondary. That's not my problem. My problem is, first of all, you're starting with Jacob Eason to start the season, and who knows when Carson Wentz will be healthy. I know he came off the COVID list, but he was also dealing with an injury in practice. So it's going to take some time. But hoping Carson Wentz, by the time he gets back, it's going to be promising things with him and for Frank Reich. But think about it. Russell Wilson, all throughout this offseason, had bragged about a brand new offensive line. Well, he's got one. It's going to be pretty interesting how the Seahawks season's really going to pan out, especially with a competitive NFC West. But this is only the first step. But as I've said, it's going to be a rocky start for Indianapolis. This is kind of tough because you are dealing with Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, and Chris Carson. So I'm going to take Seattle at -2.5, and let's go with the 28-23 score over the Colts. All right, this is not going to be as easy as people think it is, but I'm going to take the Chargers at -1 on the road against Washington. Here's the storyline first off. The Chargers revamped their offensive line, getting Rashawn Slater in the draft. They got Corey Linsley, Matt Filer, and Adeo Bushi. They amped up that offensive line for several reasons. One, they needed a better run game, and they're also protecting Justin Herbert, their future franchise quarterback. They love what they put together. Tom Telesco was an absolute genius putting this whole thing together. But here's the deal. This is another storyline you have to think of. In Ryan Fitzpatrick's career in week ones, he's been absolutely on fire. And I don't know what it is. Can we just get week ones every week with Ryan Fitzpatrick? Because for whatever reason, he seems to put up really, really good numbers and he seems to put up points, but it's going to be very, very close because of the fact of Chase Young and Rashawn Slater both facing off. That's going to be a fun duel to watch between the two of them. But I do think Justin Herbert's going to get the last laugh against Washington and against Ron Rivera. That's a tough competition. I'm going to take the Chargers to win by 2 in this margin and only with 1 point, 30-28. I like that cushion. I think the Chargers will win. Close, not that easy, but they'll come away with the win on the road. Yes, finally, the revenge game that we wanted to see. First and foremost, I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers here in this one at -5. Carolina right now, like I said, Sam Darnold, he's going to be one guy that honestly, there's going to be a lot of things to kind of really keep in mind of. But Sam Darnold in a brand new organization like Carolina and facing off against his former team, the Jets, that's a big time storyline. And -5.5. First of all, Matt Rule has a lot of fun pieces to mess with. And he's got a lot to really work around with. But Sam Darnold, you're going to see the absolute best of him this season. And Zach Wilson, this is a tough first task because Carolina is a team that they wanted to get better. They wanted to get stronger. And I like with what they're dealing with. So I'm going to take Carolina -5. I think Sam Darnold's going to get his revenge game, and he's going to show the Jets why Adam Gase was a terrible option as head coach. 28-21, Carolina wins at home. All right, I'm going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars at -3. I'm going with Trevor Lawrence against the Houston Texans. First of all, the Texans, they've just had a lot of big bad raps, and they've had a lot of baggage. But Trevor Lawrence, we're going to see what he does in week 1. And with Urban Meyer, there's 2 firsts in this storyline. So I'm excited to see how Trevor Lawrence is going to do. They've got a lot of really good weapons around in the wide receiver core. You got James Robinson, who's in there with Travis Etienne out for the season. But I do expect James Robinson to really have a good year. I think he's going to be really good on the ground. And Houston's just going to have their hands full. So I'm going to take Jacksonville to win 27-20. All right, the game I explained about here on this show that is going to be very, very difficult from here. I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns +6 against Kansas City on the road. First of all, this is a revenge game, folks, and I like the chances. I like with what Cleveland can do with their defense, and especially a revenge game like this. Kansas City, they're coming off of a Super Bowl loss. Now, not to say that they're pissed off and they're hungry and they want to get better, but defensively on the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't know about this one. Outside of Chris Jones and Tyrann Mathieu, that's tough. So I like my chances with Cleveland, but I also do think that this revenge game is going to prove one thing, that they want to be the better team in the AFC. And I think that's going to be the first step for the Browns. So I'm going to take +6 with a week 1 that's unpredictable against Kansas City. They'll win this one on the road 27-21. All right, it's the battle between two Alabama quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones. I'm going to stick onto the side of Mac Jones, and I'm going to take the Patriots at -3. First of all, you're at home in Foxborough, and it's going to be a tough matchup because there have been a lot of storylines about Tua, whether they're sure about him. They're obviously sure about their defense because Brian Flores has really put this thing together, but it's tough to win in New England. It's tough to win in Foxborough. At a -3, this is going to be a pretty tacky game because, first of all, you got two of these young quarterbacks, both from Alabama, but Mac Jones is very to the script. So he's the guy that's going to really set the tone for Bill Belichick and for this offense. I think New England, with their defense set, they're going to make a lot of noise, and they're also going to be a team that's going to try to shut down Tua and make it uncomfortable. And remember, Bill Belichick against young quarterbacks, it's very easy to get pressure on Tua. So I'm going to take New England to win. It's going to be a pretty close one because of the fact of both the defensive minds. So I'm going to take it a 24-20 New England wins in Foxborough. I'm going to take Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers at -4 on the road in New Orleans because, first of all, no Drew Brees this year for the Saints. In comes Jameis Winston. But here's another problem. Michael Thomas is out right now. And so we don't even know exactly what's going to happen with Michael Thomas come this season. So without him, they've got no Jared Cook. I don't know who's really the top liner outside of Thomas in their wide receiver core. It's so questionable to me. So I think Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, and even after all these topics we saw in the last couple of months, they're going to be ready. They're going to be ready for anything. So I'm going to take Green Bay to win on the road in New Orleans. That offense is going to be putting on some serious points. I'm going to take it 27-21 with that -4. All right, this is kind of a tough one, but you know what? I'm going to take Denver here on the road in MetLife against the Giants. First of all, Teddy Bridgewater is now named the quarterback instead of Drew Lock. There's some positive upsides from there, but we don't know. First of all, Denver, their defense during the preseason limited teams to less than 20 points. So what does that tell you? The secondary is all about shutdown. And Vic Fangio, a very much respected defensive-minded coach. Now, we know he's on the hot seat because of the fact of the performances that Denver's put up in the last couple seasons. But, however, Patrick Surtain, Justin Simmons, and Kyle Fuller, that is a shutdown, that's a shutdown secondary. You can't even get any passes through. And especially when it's go time for Daniel Jones and that offense, with the offense they got together, Daniel Jones cannot afford to make mistakes. I feel like Denver is going to put so much pressure on Daniel Jones, but this is going to be a really kind of a defensive trade-off by both of them. So I'm going to take Denver -2.5, and we're going to go with the close score of 20-17. All right, the infamous Sunday night game. Matthew Stafford taking on the Chicago Bears. But you know what, though? It's not even going to be about the LA show. It's going to be the Chicago show. I'm going to take the Bears at +7.5. Listen, if there's any team that knows Matthew Stafford better than anybody, it's the Chicago Bears. I mean, they've been playing him multiple times throughout the NFC North. I don't know what I'm going to get out of Matthew Stafford here this season. So he hasn't even taken a preseason snap with this first team, and neither have we even seen him work under Sean McVay's system. So there's so much of this high praise, but there's a reason why. So I don't know. I don't buy it. So I'm going to take Chicago here because I do think that their defense with Roquan Smith and Khalil Mack, they're going to be pissed off. But I also do think that an offense with Andy Dalton and a couple of others, they're going to try, this is going to be tough. But I'm going to take that 7.5, and I'm going to make it a 28-20 Chicago win on the road in Los Angeles on Sunday night. And finally, the last game of Monday night, it's the Baltimore Ravens against the Las Vegas Raiders in Allegiant Stadium. Beautiful night on a Monday night, but you know what, though? It's about to be a party crash in Vegas, knowing you've got all these fans back in Allegiant Stadium. I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens at -4.5. First of all, I know that they just signed Le'Veon Bell to a contract for their running back depth with him and Gus Edwards. But however, Lamar Jackson, you still got Mark Andrews, you still got Marquise Brown, you still have a bunch of really good options for them. And also, too, defense is reshaped, but you still got at least a couple of pieces that I'd be looking for here and there. But it's not to say that the Raiders can't put up points. I do think they can. Derek Carr and Darren Waller can very much put up points. So can Josh Jacobs. But I don't know who's their number one wide receiver right now on their depth chart. That's one that kind of concerns me. But it's also a brand new defense with Gus Bradley. So I do like the fact of how I put this. If you've got the overall point spread, I'm going to tell you right now, take the over on the point spread. I think Baltimore is going to win this game with that 4.5, and I'm going to make it a 35-30. Baltimore wins in Las Vegas on a Monday night, and man, it's going to be an absolute party. It's going to be an absolute showing. So there you go, folks. All of my bets here are provided by Thrive Fantasy. It's going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait to start this sooner. And again, this is a brand new season of Prime Predictions. I love my picks. I love with what we're seeing. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting how the storylines of this year is going to pan out. But so that's going to do it for me here tonight. I hope to see you guys soon. Sorry about all that. But I hope to see you guys next week. And like I said, Prime Predictions, it's back, baby. And I am excited to see how the Prime Predictions are going to hit this year. We've been 80-20 all throughout it. So I've been trusting a lot of, these picks for the last couple of seasons. So I'm excited for this one. But other than that, thank you all for watching. I appreciate all of you guys here on the Spotlight Sports Network and, of course, on the Snake Sports Talk Show. But we got to roll because we've also got a fantasy draft coming up right around the corner. You don't want to miss that here. We'll see you guys next week. All right? And enjoy Thursday night and this weekend. I'm also going to do play-by-play commentaries for my LA Chargers. You guys do not want to miss that. Take care. Have a great night, and we'll see you guys this next week. Take care.